close enough to see what the other side are having for lunch. That's how these Ukrainian troops have spent the last few years, just 300 meters from the Russian-backed separatists facing them.
A whole night without a single shot. I don't remember a day like that. Maybe on the first night of the ceasefire. It's so strange when there's no fire at all. You get all nervous. We're used to the shooting.
The conflict may have fallen out of the headlines, but the shooting and the death continues. Less than a 10-minute drive away, a young woman out walking with her child was severely wounded by a stray bullet just last week. Our guide through the trenches, Alexander, was in his second year at cadet school when the conflict broke out. When he enrolled, he could hardly have imagined that he would soon find himself 1,000 kilometers from home, fighting a trench war.
Everyone is tired of the war, has parents, wives, worried about them back home. If the politicians can sort this out by talking, why not? If we withdraw from here, it's not a disaster, as long as our opponent does the same.
But off camera, many soldiers are more skeptical. They don't want to give up territory regained from the separatists at the cost of many lives. But President Zelensky's government is convinced that only a buffer zone between the front lines can bring peace. It's a short drive from the trenches to one of the region's biggest crossing points between government and separatist-held territory. Thousands make the journey every day, spending hours out in the cold.
We're hoping for peace. After all this time, we need to resolve this war. It's been 6 years since it all began. I'm convinced Donbass is part of Ukraine.
I don't understand what Merkel and Macron want to do. Zelensky and Putin should sit down together, drink some vodka together and put all this behind them.
We need a united Ukraine, and we need an end to all this, so people don't have to suffer in these queues anymore.
Donetsk, one of Ukraine's biggest cities, is less than half an hour's drive down the road behind me. We can't go there. The pro-Russian separatists in control of the city are wary of the foreign press. President Zelensky was elected earlier this year on a promise to bring Donetsk back to Ukrainian government control. That's what this meeting in Paris is all about. Back at the front line, it's quiet, at least during daylight hours. Silence allows time to think about the future.
I'm not interested in this Normandy summit. What will happen will happen. But this war needs to end. I've lost so many comrades already. But forgiving the other side, making peace, that's going to be tough.
The repercussions of this war will be felt for years to come. It's not just about the mines and grenades that litter this landscape. It's about the war in people's heads.
That report from our correspondent Nick Connolly, and he is in Paris for the talks and joins us for more. Hi, Nick. This will be the first ever meeting between Ukraine's President Zelensky and President Putin. What do you think we can expect when these two meet?
Well, Sumi, the expectations are very high indeed. Basically, everyone has been waiting for this meeting since Volodymyr Zelensky was elected to Ukraine's presidency earlier this year. You'll have Zelensky, the man who this time last year was a comedian and not in politics at all, up against Vladimir Putin, who's been in charge of Russia for almost 20 years. That's longer than any recent Russian leader since Stalin. The question is how he, as a political newbie, will do in those talks. Volodymyr Zelensky, for his part, has put a lot of work into getting this meeting to happen, a lot of legwork, and he seems to think that the personal chemistry and that eye-to-eye contact could actually really help to change things, change the political dynamics in a way that traditional negotiations haven't. But very, very tense situation here in Paris. Lots of press, all eyes in Eastern Europe on Paris today in this meeting. Very tight security and a lot to play for.
Nick, you know, President Zelensky has made a lot of concessions in order for these talks to even go ahead. So what is at stake for him in Paris?
A great deal. Zelensky was elected to the Ukrainian presidency on a promise to bring peace, to bring Ukrainians back to the normalcy they enjoyed before 2014. Although this conflict has basically disappeared from the international headlines, people are wounded and killed in eastern Ukraine on a daily basis. Millions have lost their homes. So there's a real huge humanitarian cost to this conflict that we really underestimate maybe in Western Europe, where this isn't on our daily news screens. And beyond that, there's a real sense that Western European leaders, particularly today's host, Emmanuel Macron, wants to get back to business as normal with Putin's Kremlin, and will be putting a lot of pressure on Ukraine to make concessions to allow them to withdraw the sanctions and to re-engage with Russia.
All right, so a lot at stake, a lot of pressure here. How likely is it that these talks will come to any sort of agreement?
Well, that's the million-dollar question. This kind of summitry is not an exact science. The expectations are definitely high, and the fact that they have got together is already a big deal. Meeting at this kind of level hasn't happened for the past 3 years. But the question is, what kind of concessions is Zelensky willing to make? Is he willing to basically give up on parts of Ukraine's sovereignty, its ability to decide its own future without asking Moscow for permission? And even if he does, will the people back home in Kiev accept it? Will there be a backlash from the people, from the war veterans who've really invested so much of their lives, their security in keeping Ukraine safe? Will they accept some kind of deal with Russia? That's the big question. We're going to be here all day to keep our viewers updated on where these talks go.
That's right. Those talks set to get underway in a few hours' time. Our correspondent Nick Connolly there in Paris. Thank you.